All right, thanks everybody for hopping on today. Really appreciate you coming to spend some time and hopefully learn some things with us. My name is Jesse Hill. I'm the president of Tier 3 IT Solutions, and I'm excited today to be joined by Adam from our team. Adam, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm Adam Hodacsek. I work for Tier 3 IT Solutions as a technology alignment manager. And honestly, the majority of what I do on the day-to-day plays exactly into this presentation. So I'm looking forward to it today.
Yes. Uh, I think you are the perfect guest host for this because the topic that we're going to go through today, this idea of technology health checks, and it's something that we take very seriously. And really, what the idea with this is that it helps to uncover risk and opportunities in your technology stack that might go unnoticed. So the challenge that we have in technology management is that small, seemingly small, overlooked things like missed patches, weak access controls, they can open doors into your network and potentially cause interruptions to your business. So we want to help you learn how you might be able to minimize that risk and maintain a strong, continuous business. So we've got the agenda here. We're going to jump right in, and we don't want to focus all on the bad side of things. But the reality is that technology is accelerating. Our businesses all demand more from technology today. And you can see here some of the top threats that businesses may encounter. So, Adam, do you want to maybe start us off and talk through a couple of these?
Yeah, I'd love to. I like that AI-powered phishing and deepfakes is at the top of the list. It almost seems like AI is getting better every other hour at doing this stuff. What gets really scary though is that with AI and being able to train it on data, being able to give it a bunch of data and say, hey, write something or make something that looks like this thing, it's extremely good at doing that, and it's only going to get better. One of the other highlights on here too is ransomware. That's been a pretty big subject in the IT industry for the last 5 or 6 years. Um, Actually, I remember one of my coworkers had posted internally on one of our chat channels about a trucking company that had been around for 160 years, just about, had to close their doors because of a ransomware attack. It's kind of wild to think about, but because of what they had, how they were structured, that's all it took to shut them down. Um, Along with that, everybody loves the cloud because I have these files, this stuff, this data, these programs, they're accessible from anywhere. But all it takes to allow someone access to things that they're not supposed to have access to is to accidentally share something with a link that doesn't expire, or to miss a couple of toggles as you're setting up these services. As I'm looking at this list here, the other one that stands out to me too is that supply chain and vendor stuff. I don't deal as much with that as I'd like, because I deal more with clients. So Jesse, I wanted to ask, what's your experience been with the risks from supply chain and the vendor side of the world?
Yeah, so this is a growing area of concern, I think, for businesses is that as we adopt more cloud technologies, those types of external services, things that are out of our control, we all realize that we are dependent on them. And I'll give an example. Over the last month and a half, there have been a couple of very large scale outages that have affected, we'll say, the internet. So Amazon Web Services had an outage. Microsoft 365 had an outage. Um, I'm trying to think the back end of what actually caused those. But what ended up happening is that even though your network was stable and secure, your business might have been impacted because of somebody else's problem. And we're actually starting to see now where certain customers of yours might actually require a level of cybersecurity to be a vendor to them because they're concerned that if you have a security incident, that might affect their supply chain and their ability to, deliver service and that to their clients. So as we can see on this, there's a lot of things going on, and one of the things that I always try to point out to the folks that I chat with is that all of the threats that we talk about on this page, they have roots in technology, but the impact affects our business. And so at the end of the day, what we are concerned about is we are concerned about the ability to consistently and continuously serve our clients, support our employees, run our businesses, um, keep the wheels of progress turning. Um, the point of identifying these is that for most of us, when we're dependent on something like technology that is growing so rapidly and so complex, there's a lot that we don't know, and that we don't know that we don't know. And so that's really what, the root of an IT health check is all about. It's about taking taking time, taking a step back from all of the chaos and support and challenges and problems that you might be having in your technology, and really looking at how are we configured compared to industry best practices, compared to cybersecurity frameworks, compared to our software vendors recommendations and um, best practices, compared to lessons that we've learned along the way. So this is actually what Adam and Nick on our team do as their primary role. So Adam, do you want to maybe just explain a little bit about how we approach this and what you're looking for when you're going through the process?
For sure, I'd love to. The Arguably the most important part of what I do on a day to day is running through our we have a curated, I guess for lack of a better term, a checklist that we run through. That checklist is full of things that are industry best practices, things that we've discovered along the way, little configuration tweaks to help make the technology work better for you and for your business. With that checklist, though, um, a lot of the questions in there are posed in a manner that help to bring to light things that may become issues down the road, things that are going to cause friction and generate problems, things that um, could potentially lead to a cybersecurity event or a cybersecurity attack, things that are going to produce downtime, that are going to detract from how productive you guys can be.
Yeah, I want to point out there, it's you kind of are alluding to the idea that we want to prevent interruptions. And a lot of the content in the deck here is talking about all these threats and these ransomware and these insider things. But really, what we are talking about is we're talking about any time your staff, your team, your business is unable to use the technology that you have to its full capability and capacity. So that could be, you know, an unexpected outage because a piece of equipment has not been updated recently and it's crashed on us. It could be a piece of equipment that has reached the end of its reasonably useful life. Um, we all know that these are machines that humans have made. They will eventually fail. And so the other thing that Adam talked about there is about having what he called a curated list, which really is um, an incredibly valuable, incredibly time-consuming and detail-focused task that happens behind the scenes of your regular IT management. But it's about really breaking down every aspect of the technology that your business uses and looking at it and saying, what are the best practices in this area? So as an example, you might think about taking a vehicle in for a 151 point inspection. Well, for every part of the vehicle, they have an established best practice. When we think about the tires, well, what's the what's the air pressure in them? What's the tread depth? What do the sidewalls look like? Right? They have multiple best practices that they're looking at just on that one area. Then if they went to the brakes, they'd have a different one. If they went to the transmission, to the all of those things. And so it's the same concept that you need to take this incredibly expansive and complex thing that is technology in our business, break it into chunks, and start looking at, the real life kind of implications of where you are, right? And the basis here is that you can't protect what you can't see. And the challenge with cybersecurity, like we just talked about, is breaking it down so that we can identify and address, those specific areas to look at. So, Adam, do you have anything you want to add on to this one? I feel like we've touched on a little bit about it, but actually, the one that stands out to me right here is the asset awareness. We haven't touched on this yet, and the reason it popped out there just at first glance is, and you can comment on this, there are a lot of businesses that we meet with that don't even know what technology they have. So, do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit and what your experience has been?
Yeah, I think a lot of my experience these days have been a, a hey, Mr. Point of Contact or Mr. President.
Oh,
Did I freeze there for a sec?
yeah, you're cutting out a bit.
Uh-oh. I'll
It's,
see what I can do on the
uh,
back end here.
I'll take over here.
Sounds
So
good.
where he was going to go with this is that, you know, as we use the word technology, we realize that it means a lot of different things. Every single device, piece of software, cloud service, um, integration that we have is part of our technology stack. And again, we can't protect what we don't know about. So most businesses, when we ask them about their technology, they tell us about what servers they have, how many workstations, i.e., desktops and laptops they have. What they don't think about is all of the printers that are on their network, the scanners, the smart thermostats, the internet connected, Christmas light timers. You know, it's really easy to minimize all of those side pieces of technology. But when you actually look at some of the um, modern cyber attacks and outages and those types of things, they are sometimes the result of these, you know, sidebar kind of pieces of technology that have become compromised because nobody's looking at them and managing them. The other thing that I think has really come to light recently is what we call shadow IT. And I would drop this into asset awareness as well. And we started off talking about how quickly AI is changing and evolving. And this is an area where your employees are likely using an AI platform that you're not aware of. And they're doing that because it's helping them write better emails, it's helping them respond to RFPs faster, have difficult conversations, create imagery, like whatever it might be. But if they're using a platform that you have not endorsed, subscribed to, secured, then there's a chance that your information is being kind of consumed and brought into those platforms and is being used for it to learn and to um, kind of build its future responses for other users off of that. So all of the things that we're talking about here, they have their kind of basis in good management, knowing what we have, where it is, how it's being used, having policy around it, education, and then we get into the tools and protections and those types of things. And again, part of the challenge with cybersecurity is that small vulnerabilities, small oversights can blow up and turn into big problems. So, Adam, do you want to? I think we're back online. Do you want to touch on any
Hopefully.
of these and kind of give maybe just two or three examples of circumstances where we've run into issues with some of these things?
Yeah, for sure. Um, One of the common ones that I run into is actually unpatched systems and software.
Mm.
Um, and where that usually comes from is not because people are going out and specifically not patching things or not keeping their software up to date, but they'll have a server that runs one function that they're becoming less and less dependent on, or a computer that is it just does this one thing, and so because it only does this one thing and they only need it once or twice a month, it kind of gets tucked in the back corner and gets forgotten about. But because that runs Windows, or because that runs a Windows server, or because it runs whatever piece of software, that has an end date for its life cycle. And so a lot of times what will happen is it lives in the corner and only gets thought about when it's needed, but it falls out of support. Microsoft stops updating it. Adobe stops supporting it, which becomes a big problem when things stop working and you can't get updates or patches for stuff. And then it becomes a big vulnerability. It becomes a launch pad for an attacker to then look for other vulnerable devices. It grants them access to the rest of the network. And
Yeah,
then, sorry, go ahead
I was
if
going
you
to
had
say,
something to add there.
as you were describing that, we're really talking about ways that attackers or ways that threats get into our network, um, and that the inactive or orphaned accounts, the ones right beside it there. I was thinking of an example where we got called in to do an investigation for a business in Alberta here who they had fallen victim to a fund transfer fraud, meaning that um, somebody on their team wired money to the wrong account. And ultimately, what we discovered when we got in was in their Microsoft 365, they had something like 150 active email accounts, but they only had about 35 people on staff. And what was happening was that every time they hired a new employee, they would create the account, but they wouldn't disable it once that person left. And so having a process to go in and review and remove those orphaned accounts actually really adds to the overall security of your organization.
Actually, really glad you brought that up because that's what I was going to point out next was that's another big one. The number of accounts that oh, this person had it. Oh, I forgot to mention that they left, but it's not disabled and it has access to the local network, or it has access to their email, or it has access to files in the cloud.
Well, and it's tough, right? Because a lot of businesses they think, oh, we're gonna send an email into, we're gonna have them, turn off their account. Well, they forget that there are multiple accounts in multiple places in cloud services, on firewalls, on VPNs, on, software applications. So it's one of the challenges in IT management these days is the depth and the breadth of configuring a user account. And
Yep.
again, a lot of these are, very technical things that need to be looked at. And when it comes back to what we have mentioned before, is that all of these risks and threats and misconfigurations have a business impact. Um, it doesn't have to be a total outage or a ransomware attack or something like that to negatively impact your employees' productivity, their morale, your client experience, your reputation as, a level of, service provider. And so when you're thinking about technology, hopefully it's not an expense. Hopefully it's an investment. Because if it's an investment kind of side of your equation, then you'll be looking for ways to minimize some of those hidden expenses that are occurring as a result of, potentially, overlooked, misconfigured technologies.
I
Um,
guess a prime example of that, just looking at what's on the slide here and continuing on with the inactive or orphaned accounts. One of the things that I've run into more than I care to admit is outfit let somebody go, that they'll go on leave, um, but they won't remove the 365 licensing that they're paying for Microsoft from that account because it slipped somebody's mind to send an email in, or they got halfway through sending the email and got pulled off onto something else and never finished it. And so that's 35, 40, $50 a month that they're spending on this license that no one's using.
yeah. Yeah, that adds up pretty quick. If you have, three, five, 10, in the case of this other business, 110,
Yep.
licenses, like it was significant. And, it was lack of policy, lack of procedure, all those types of things. So, yeah, again, the point on this one is really just to, again, to think about the fact that technology isn't just our ability to sit and send emails and run whatever our point of sale platform is. It is how most of us run our businesses. Think about if you didn't have technology for a week, what would that look like for your experience, your relationship with your customers? Um, when you did get it back, how likely are they to continue to trust you? And so really the anatomy of the health check is, you can see it on here. It's an incredibly comprehensive process. And the point I want to make on it is that it's a process. This is not a one-time exercise. When we think about, even just checking your Microsoft 365 configuration, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of options available within that platform for configuration. And again, the best practices today are going to be different than the best practices a year from now. So if you're going to sit and do an assessment today, that's good. You have to do the assessment, you have to implement the changes, you have to go back, reassess to make sure that they actually got done the way that you expected, and then make a plan for what the next set of implementations and improvements and changes are. Um, and the one I want to touch on here because I think it's really important is we're talking more about user and access audit, but I really think it's important to audit your user experience, meaning do they have recurring technology problems? What is causing those? Is it a user? Is it a technology? Is it a something that we can avoid? And we always need to be thinking, is there something we could have done yesterday to have avoided the problem that occurred, today?
The best
Adam,
time to
any
implement those
comments
fixes.
here?
Yeah,
What's
I
that?
was just thinking the best time to implement those fixes is always 5 minutes before you need them, and the second best time is now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and the more well greased and well oiled that machine can work, regardless of what kind of machine it is, whether that's the machine that brings profitability, or whether that's the machine that helps minimize risk, or whether that's the machine that helps your employees be more effective. The more well oiled and well greased that machine can work, the more efficient it can operate. The more efficient it can operate, the better return on investment you get.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like anything when you start, doing an assessment, like we said, the Microsoft 365. I mean, the first time you do the assessment, you might find 100 items that you think you want to improve. Well, like knock off the 10 most critical, biggest ones. And guess what? When you go to do the next one, your list is smaller and smaller and smaller. And over time, what Adam's talking about is that you build that efficiency where you can either choose to go deeper in the items that are still there, or you can expand your scope and look elsewhere for areas of improvement. Uh, Again, the point of all of it is that you're never done.
it's a never-changing beast, and there's always something new coming out tomorrow that's going to
Yeah.
hopefully make things more efficient.
The challenges and the joys of running businesses that depend on technology. So um, today's not necessarily a sales pitch or anything like that, but this is a part of the IT field, the IT practice that we've focused on and developed a depth of expertise and process around how we can help identify blind spots, fix them before they become bigger problems, looking at ways to, manage vulnerabilities, improve performance. Maybe you have a compliance issue that's important. And to give you a clear picture of, where you're at from an IT perspective and help you develop a plan on how to address that. So if you happen to have any questions, you wanted to chat about this, we'd be happy to connect with you. Obviously, contact information is on the page here. I'm assuming you all found us on our webpage all right. Um, and I suppose, Adam, I'll ask you if you have any closing remarks, and just remind everybody that we do have the chat and the Q&A available. If you had anything specific that you wanted to discuss, we're happy to stick around and answer those questions. Or I would say thanks for joining, and Adam, I'll let you close us out.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you here today, Jesse. I really appreciate it. As I was thinking about the closing remarks there and what we're trying to do here at Tier 3 IT Solutions, the best thing I could do would be to encourage you to reach out and to ask those questions. I work with a lot of people at Tier 3, and they're all great people. They all want to help. They all want to improve that experience and make things better. So definitely
Awesome.
don't hesitate.
You bet. All right. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody, for hopping on. We do appreciate it. As I said, we'll stick around for a couple minutes if you have any questions specifically, but otherwise, have a great day.